Welcome to Soulfire Wisdom with Kate Olson. As an evolving spirit and change adventure navigator, it is Kate's mission to empower and guide you on your path and inspire your truest passions. She will encourage you to share your gifts, speak your truth, and ignite your inner wisdom and purpose. She hopes to do so with a little humor and grace, and her own soulfire passion. Kate talks with amazing guests who have embraced the pursuit and are fanning the flames of their own passion, purpose, and soulfire wisdom. Now here's your host, Kate.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Soulfire Wisdom and Tips, Tricks, and Triumphs Tuesday. So if this is your first time listening, I'm a hypnotherapist, a Reiki master, NLP practitioner, and a life coach. But I like to call myself a change adventure navigator because I love guiding clients through obstacles and adversity to find their path, purpose, and peace. So today, before we get started, I'd like to talk a little bit about peace and about about International Peace Day. I actually saw that advertised and thought that we were going to be lucky enough to have our guest today on International Peace Day. But then I saw that it wasn't till next week, September 21st. But I want to talk about it today anyway, because I think, thinking about it for an extra week might be a good idea, being as it's such an important topic. So International Peace Day was actually formed by a UN resolution in 1981, and then it was first celebrated in 1982. And what it is for is to recognize the efforts to end conflict and promote peace all over the world. And during that 24-hour period, the UN asks nations or people all over the world to have a 24-hour ceasefire and promote nonviolence. And each year, the day and the activities that go on that day, the speeches and so forth, have a theme. And so the theme for 2021 is Recovering Better for an Equitable and Sustainable World. So I just wanted to, bring that up so you could think about it through the week and maybe put some extra thoughts and prayers in as we celebrate that next week. And I also have this has always been an interest, a thought, and a hope of mine that someday we would, have peace. And so I have a little ebook that's available to you if you would like it for free. It's called Inner Peace, and all you have to do is email me at soulfirewisdom@gmail.com, and I will send you that ebook. So I'm really excited to talk with our guest today. Our guest is Claude AnShin Thomas, and he's an ordained Buddhist monk, former combat veteran, author, speaker, and founder of the Zaltho Foundation. He was born in the U.S. and exposed to violence first in an abusive childhood. He volunteered at 18 to serve in the Vietnam War, and through that experience, he felt that he had been responsible for a lot of death and years of unemployment, social isolation, and violence and addiction. He began to walk a Buddhist path in 1990, leading him to become a Zen Buddhist monk in the Japanese Soto Zen Tradition in August of 1995. Today, he speaks publicly and leads retreats and meetings, that is pre-COVID. And he also visits religious and secular communities all over the world, addressing this very important topic, the cultures of violence and how they can become transformed. So I'm really happy to introduce him now. Hello, how are you?
Greetings. I'm doing quite okay. Thank you.
Great. So to start out with, can you tell us a little more about yourself and what brought you to your current path?
Yes, I'm quite willing to do that. However, before I start, sometimes I'm not at the meditation center where I normally am, and sometimes the internet here can be a bit glitchy. So if it begins to be problematic, please just give me a heads up. How did I get? How did I get to this path?
Yes, it's quite a transition from Vietnam to being an advocate for peace.
Yes, and I think when we talk about peace, let's say when I engage with this topic of peace, I'm very cautious about that because there are a number of different ideas about what peace is. One of the things that I like to encourage in people is that peace is not the absence of conflict. How we need to develop the ability to be in conflict without that conflict degenerating into war and violence. We need to be able to disagree with one another and find ways to disagree with one another that don't result in death, destruction, and blowing stuff up.
Yes.
How did I get here? I really believe, Kate, that at a very young age, I understood that that the world that I lived in, that there was an awareness, there was something more than the relative experiences that I was having. I remember a story that I was about 10. And I grew up in a small rural farming community in Northwest Pennsylvania, a place named Waterford. It's just south of Erie.
Okay.
There was a television program that it was a Jerry Lewis telethon, and they were raising money for starving children in Africa or something. And I remember the pictures, and I was so moved by that I got a coffee can and put a top on it, cut a hole in it, and I started going around Waterford collecting money to give to this cause. What happened is that the police came and they took me, because they thought I was out scamming money or something. My mom was driving me around, and when they were convinced, they somehow, I don't know how this all evolved, but somehow they were convinced that I really was legitimate, and I actually ended up on the local TV channel as someone who is making this effort above and beyond, because I was so moved by what this telethon was attempting to accomplish. I had this sensitivity, yet I was being steadily conditioned away from that sensitivity because of the dynamics within my family and the culture that I was raised in. My father had been a soldier in the Second War, although he was a school teacher, and he was very well respected and liked, active in the politics of education in Pennsylvania and successful. Still, I was an athlete and quite successful at that. And that culture, that environment was conditioning me. It wasn't okay to be sensitive. You know,
Yeah.
it was the culture of athletics that I was exposed to, or that I was living in. It was a culture that didn't reward you for being smart and sensitive. And it was about, I couldn't be successful in school. I couldn't like poetry. I couldn't like literature. In high school, when everyone wanted to take, when I went to school, all the young boys had to take shop, woodworking or metalworking. And all the young girls had to do home economics or business, typing and things. I didn't want to do shop. I wanted to do home economics. I lived alone with my dad. And so I wanted to know how to take care of the house. And I remember there was such a furor about my wanting to take home economics. They let me finally, only because my dad was a teacher there. But it was the struggle. It was exactly the same. I remember after the military, I got my bachelor's degree in a state school, Slippery Rock University, and part of my education, I had to do student teaching, and I was student teaching in a small rural school, 7 through 12, in one building. At one end of the building was the men's faculty room. At another end of the building was the women's faculty room. Well, my room was right across from the women's faculty room. So on breaks, I would go and hang out there. And at midterms, they failed me because I wasn't going to the men's faculty room.
Oh,
this is a sort of an environment that
yes,
I was conditioning.
Definitely. Yes, the gender roles were very strict.
Yeah.
So in your first book, At Hell's Gate, A Soldier's Journey from War to Peace, you describe your journey of recovery after the war. You talk about the war before the war, and the war after the war. Can you explain what you meant by that?
Sure. For those of you who are interested.
Yes.
The war before the war. I mentioned my father had been a soldier in the First War. Most of the men in the community I grew up in had been soldiers in the Second War, not First War, Second War. My grandfather had been a soldier in the First War, my dad's father, and his father had been a soldier in the war with Spain. So there was this history of military service in the patriarchal lineage of my family. Also, there was a lot of, my father never spoke about his military service other than to glorify it. Now, I mentioned my father was a school teacher, well respected. He also drank himself to death, drank alcoholically. And my parents, there was a lot of tension in the family. My mother was very violent. So as a young boy, I experienced both physical and sexual violence. And then when my parents split, my father was simply he attended all my sporting events, but he wasn't really there. He was there, but not really there. So that dynamic, I was learning about this dynamic. That was a war before the war. I did enlist in the U.S. Army at the age of 17. And my father had to sign the papers for me because I wasn't old enough to sign a legal contract. When he took me to the bus station in Erie to go to Buffalo, New York, where the induction center was. And he dropped me off and turned around and left. Didn't say goodbye or anything.
Hmm.
Then it was a shock for me, the military was, because I had been my own parent, my own decider, my own rule maker since I was 12. I
Hmm.
got in the military, that didn't work there.
Right.
And it was a shock. I think around week 3, I wanted to go home. But once there, you can't just go home.
No.
So I managed to survive basic training, and then in my advanced infantry training, and then I was doing some extensive specialized training in Europe. And I had started to drink like my dad because I didn't have the capacity to identify the feelings that I was having, or I just didn't know how to connect with the world around me. And so the only way I knew how to deal with that is how I was taught.
Yes, what
My
you saw.
my solution to address that was I'd volunteer to go to Vietnam. Right? All the stories I heard, all the movies I saw, I go to Vietnam, I serve honorably, I get some medals, I come home, I'm a hero, people offer me jobs, everything will be taken care of.
Yeah.
That's the great myth. So the war before the war set me up to go to the war. And then in the war, those of us who are trained, everyone who goes in the military is trained to go to war. Basic training, advanced training, train us to go to war. So in that training, we are conditioned to create an enemy, the other. It is not possible to dehumanize a whole group of people without losing contact with our own humanity.
Yes. Yes.
And the reality of war, inflicts upon us a moral injury that never goes away.
Right. Yes.
War before the war. Now, I didn't have any idea how psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually I had been wounded. I didn't understand that because I was very disconnected. That's one of the jobs of the military, to teach you to disconnect from that. So once I came out of the military, the world was a mystery to me, and I only really knew how to deal with aggression or to deal with disagreements and conflicts in a particular way. I also, to feel anything, I had to really. I was a high risk taker. I had to be a high risk taker to feel anything. Once one has experienced an adrenaline dump, the overdosing on adrenaline, there is nothing in the world that's comparable to that. And so regular feelings don't register. So I pursued life. My life trajectory led me into making choices that were high risk, and those kinds of behavior choices led me into more and more trouble with cultural norms. So
what were some of the turning points for you in finding healing and transformation during that process after you returned?
Yes, it didn't happen right away. I got out of military hospital in 1968, and from 1968 until, let's say, 1981, my life was really, it was a mess. I just believe that's the way it had to be. And my family echoed that. I saw it everywhere. I didn't know my life could be different. in 1980, I entered into psychotherapy to save a relationship. And the relationship didn't last, but I stayed in psychotherapy. And that man helped me save my life. Psychotherapy led me to begin to engage with some people different than I had been engaging with. And one of the things this psychiatrist said to me is that if I wanted the therapeutic process to work, I needed to stop drinking alcohol and taking drugs. He asked me if I could do that, and I said, sure. I lied to him because I didn't think that that was a problem. So 1983, the overdoses were coming closer and closer together. And in 1983, actually, before that, I was complaining to this psychiatrist that I couldn't meet anyone like myself who wasn't drinking alcohol or taking other drugs. And he said, well, why don't you go to a 12-step meeting? I said, well, why would I want to do that? But I don't have a problem with that stuff. He said, but you can meet people there like you who don't have a problem with that stuff. He was a clever guy, boy.
Yes.
I did go, and there were some people that I met there. And what they told me is that I was complaining and crying and weeping and all sorts of stuff. And one man told me that the biggest problem I had was the first drink, the first fix, or the first pill. That's what he told me. And he said I needed to go to treatment. I argued with him, or let's say I didn't argue, I just dismissed it. I did, however, in a moment of desperation, called him, and I agreed to go. That was a major turning point in my life. When I stopped taking alcohol and other drugs, and have since stayed stopped. That set me on a path of developing some tools and becoming conscious of of the feelings that I had and how to somehow navigate my way in society and culture.
Yes.
Which then led me to the first meditation retreat, Buddhist meditation retreat.
So what motivated you to actually follow the path of becoming a Buddhist monk? There's a big leap from going to meditation to deciding you're going to become a Buddhist monk.
Yes, it is a big leap. And it was not one that... So the first meditation retreat that I went to was a retreat facilitated for other soldiers. It was at the suggestion of a social worker that I was also in a group therapy process with, who recommended that I go. I didn't go easily, I didn't go willingly, but I went. And in this retreat, the retreat was facilitated by a Vietnamese Buddhist monk, my enemy. And I remember at the conclusion of that, something happened in that retreat. I don't know exactly what, but in a group of my peers, I took the risk to begin to talk for the first time about some of the things that I witnessed and experienced and participated in. I was still very cautious about talking about this stuff. I was afraid of it. But I remember going up to this Buddhist monk, and I wanted to apologize for all that I had been responsible for in Vietnam, and the only thing that could come out of my mouth, I was crying, snot was running out of my nose. I said, all I could say is I want to go back to Vietnam. And his attendant, a nun, said, before you do that, come to our monastery. If you go back now, they'll exploit you. Come to our monastery. Let us help you. We can help you. And I went. I had to raise the money. I was unemployable, but I managed to. The money came together. I bought the ticket. I went with the idea to stay for 30 days, and I stayed for 3 years. At the 3-year point, though, I knew that that wasn't a place for me. I left, came back to the U.S. I was invited to do a talk, to participate, to do a talk and lead some daily meditation practices, sitting meditation practices at the summer session of the Naropa Institute. And there I met a man who introduced me to an American Zen Buddhist teacher. And he invited me to his monastery in Yonkers, New York. I really liked what was happening there. He said he wanted to ordain me, and I said, why? I didn't say sure. I said, what? What do you want to ordain me? My language is a lot more harsh than that, but I did. I just kept doing the next thing. I have no idea how come. I just kept doing it. And somehow at a real subliminal level, it just made sense to me.
So one of the biggest problems with our veterans is post-traumatic stress disorder. Mm-hmm. If you could say something to any combat veterans that might be listening, about struggling after they return and what you would recommend, what would that be? What would you want to say to them?
The first thing I say is that post-traumatic stress is an aspect of moral injury, a wounding that we have experienced through our service.
Yes.
We are not disordered. I take the D out of it.
Good.
Our how we're affected, or like how we view the world, makes absolute sense based on the nature of our experiences. I also let them know that peace, let's say healing, is not the absence of suffering. It's learning to live in a different relation with that suffering. It never goes away. The more we don't want to feel the way we feel, the tighter the grip of those feelings has on us, the more hopeless our life seems. And so I encourage them. And I just say, look, if I can help you in some way, if I can support you in some way, then let me. I have a map. I can give you some tools that can support you in this process of discovering what that means for you, peace with your unpeacefulness. But you got to want to do it.
Yes, definitely. Yes, they've actually changed the post-traumatic stress disorder to referring to it more as post-traumatic growth.
Oh.
So,
yeah, I haven't heard that one yet, but yeah, thank you.
So this is a time of great awareness and change in the world. And I think it's a time when we are becoming very aware of both the costs and the limitations of war as a problem-solving option. Can you comment on this?
Well, yes. One of the things that I understood when I came in, the reason I accepted to become ordained, especially in this lineage, was that very simply said, Buddhist practice informs me that if I want my life to be different, I have to do things differently. Doesn't matter what I think, doesn't matter what I believe, certainly doesn't matter what I say. matters everything what I do. And if I want to see peace in the world, I need to be that peace, not talk about it, not discuss it, not define it, but be that. And so I really, that's what really makes the most sense to me. I need to recognize that I'm an integral part of an interconnected reality. This is something else that was said to me. As I am, the world becomes, because self and world are not two things.
Yes.
Great awareness. I don't worry about if we're in a period of great awareness or great awakening, but it's also true that violence only gets more violence. Violence is never a solution. Even when it appears to work, it does not work. It
Yes.
only invites more violence. Anger, the same. It only breeds more anger. Hatred only breeds more hatred. We can see that how it's unfolding in this country.
Yes. That's what I mean. I think people are beginning to see that.
Yes, I really hope so. I mean, that's why I live this practice. That's the reason I took vows. It's the reason I wear robes. Is I want to live this out loud. I think it's just really important because
Yes.
I care so deeply about humanity and the direction that it's heading.
So, just in recent weeks, we've seen the end of another war, very much like the Vietnam War, in that it lasted way too long. And what are your thoughts on the situation in Afghanistan and the recent evacuation, and how it compares to the experience of Vietnam?
I would say that I get asked this question as soon as people understand that that I have been a soldier. I did all of my grieving in front of the first Iraq War.
Mm.
I understood that once we went in there, that it couldn't have any other outcome than what it's had. I understood when we went into Afghanistan, it couldn't have had any other outcome than what it had. I do think in the evacuation, it couldn't have gone any different. People can complain and say it was chaotic and that they've never lived out there. They don't know what those circumstances are like. They don't know anything about the cultures there. They don't know how people function. I think, yes, could some things have been done differently? Of course. However, I think that under the circumstances, there wasn't any other solution. The only way Afghanistan could have ever been, the only way Afghanistan could have worked, well, it could never have worked really, but the only way it could have sort of looked like it was working is if it would have become a U.S. colony. It's like we can't go in there and.
Yeah, I don't think that would have worked either.
No, it wouldn't work. We already know that, but we would have had to stay there. For
and we weren't
any different than it is now. We'd have had to stay, and that wasn't it's not a
well, it wasn't an option. We can't keep going around the world trying to make everybody do what we do.
I absolutely agree with you.
So your latest book is called Bringing Meditation to Life. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the common misconceptions about the practice of meditation? Yes.
Yes. And this is something I talk about every Thursday Saturday, Sunday, and Wednesday. When because we have the Zaltho Foundation are doing formal sitting meditation online, followed by recitations. It's very important to understand that meditation and daily life are not two things. It's not that people think that meditation is some. I tell people, don't confuse meditation with medication. They're not the same. You sit.
Right.
Sitting is the root form of an active meditation practice. So sitting in repose, whether it's on a chair or on a cushion, gives us the opportunity to slow down, connect with our breath, and invite more silence into our lives. When we do that, what comes bubbling to the surface can be very disorienting for a lot of people. That's why it's important to, when engaging in the practice of meditation, that you understand that once you get up off that cushion or off that space where you're sitting, that what you were doing there doesn't stop. It just transforms. So walking is a form of meditation, eating is a form of meditation, if we have that root form. So I encourage people, everyone that I encounter, to cultivate an active sitting practice, connecting with the breath being the foundation of life. So 5 minutes. I mean, you have 5 minutes, 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the evening. Sit, be still, connect with your breath, and then carry that into your day.
Yes. I think recently the introduction of mindfulness has helped people a little bit in better understanding meditation, because it's brought forward the fact that it isn't something you just do, but that it creates a state that you carry into your life.
Yes, and I applaud Kabat-Zinn's effort to bring this into more practical application for people. However, I do caution people to help them to understand that, again, mindfulness is not something, is a byproduct of a disciplined spiritual practice.
Yes.
So if we're teaching, you can't really teach mindfulness. You can teach people the basic structures of an active meditation practice. You might call it mindfulness, but really, it's if people approach this a lot of people approach it looking for stress reduction, and I tell them, look, you sit down. It may seem to work for a bit, but you sit on a cushion, and you sit on a cushion. You slow yourself down, and the sources of your stress are suddenly going to come bubbling up. Then you need some additional tools to be able to work with that in a conscious way.
Yes. So your new book consists of 108 short readings on Zen Buddhist meditation and living an awakened life. Can you share one or two of your favorite readings from your new book with us?
Well, all 108 are my favorite.
Okay.
So
I'll just let you pick.
So what I can do, I was invited to participate in a memorial service for some people who were killed in an explosion. And what I did is I took 2 of the readings and combined them. And I read this at this memorial service. If you don't mind, I would like to read that.
Go ahead, please.
Yes. It's actually passages out of Bringing Meditation to Life, numbers 81 and 78. Life is fluid. Suffering comes when we attempt to attach fixed ideas to the fluid unfixed process that is life. Everything, absolutely everything that comes into existence will pass away. Keep this in mind and do not waste one precious moment, because with each breath, we sit at the edge of existence. We must live full and committed lives while at the same time not holding too tightly. The practice of meditation can support us in this process. Like every consistent, dedicated spiritual practice, support us in facing the feelings that rise up in response to life's uncertainty. Over time, we develop acceptance of the fundamental uncertainty of our lives and the reality of not knowing.
Beautiful. So you started the Zaltho Foundation. Why did you start it, and what does it do, or what is your mission with it?
Yes, I founded Zaltho in 1993. The intention at that time was to create a 501c3 that would encourage people to donate money to support Vietnam veterans who wanted to go back to Vietnam. Returning to Vietnam was cathartic for a number of people, and unfortunately, a large number of those of us who have served couldn't find any satisfaction in a regular way of life. The foundation has grown. It's grown way beyond that, but it's been an organic process. It's just evolved over the years. Right now, I don't have an official capacity on the board of foundation because my vows don't permit it. But I do have an active role with the foundation, and the work that they're doing around veterans issues and around homeless issues and around carrying an active meditation practice out into the world is it's breathtaking for me to watch how it's growing and developing. But it isn't about developing market share. It's about carrying an authentic practice. So it's a rather blue collar type of foundation.
Okay. So you actually started that before you became a monk.
I actually did, yes.
Okay. So if the listeners want to get started with a meditation practice, what guidance would you offer them to do that?
Well, interestingly enough, in the back of Hell's Gate, there is instructions.
Okay.
So that if a person wanted to, they're there. And also, if people were, what I generally communicate to people is very simple. First thing in the morning, you don't have to buy the book. First thing in the morning, when you get up, first thing you do, make your bed like you never slept in it. And then find a place and just sit. 5 minutes, just sit and connect with your breath. Instructions: breathe in through the nose, breathe out through the mouth. Not following the breath into the body, nor out of the body, but paying attention to the precise point where the breath enters the body and exits. When breathing, breathe into the abdomen. This will be known because the stomach will expand ever so slightly. And then just sit and connect with your breath. And actually what happens is when we sit, connect with our breath, 5 minutes, just 5 minutes, we find how difficult it is to just sit and connect with the breath. And so to just stay with that process. So first thing in the morning, 5 minutes, last thing at night before you go to bed, repeat the process. Do it for 30 days. And if questions arise during this process, you can reach out to me. I will be glad to support you in any way I can.
Okay.
I'm easy to find.
All right. So I know you speak on transforming the culture of violence. Are you hopeful for a future where violence within our country and around the world will be diminished? And
Yes.
do you feel that we can attain that in our lifetimes?
I am hopeful. Can we attain it in our lifetime? I have no idea. What I strive to do is wake up to the roots of war, violence, and suffering in me, and understand as that becomes transformed, that I'm healing. That as I heal for all those. I heal for the family generations that exist in me. I heal for the society and culture that exists in me. I heal for all the veterans that may not have the capacity, and I live that out loud. I have it's hard to say hope. I have yes, I have hope. I believe that it can happen. Will it happen in this lifetime? Who's to know? I don't think too much about that. It's
Okay.
just that I want to do it. I'm going to do this and see what happens.
Okay. So I have another kind of question, a little bit off topic that
Sure.
I've been asking all of my guests for a while. So I'm going to ask you too. It's one of those, a little bit amorphous questions. So what has surprised you most about life so far?
That I'm still breathing. That surprised me a lot.
Okay.
In truth, I really didn't expect to make it past 25. So that I still have an opportunity to really be the peace I want to see in the world. Yes.
Okay. So if you could leave the listeners with one thought from today's show, what would you want that to be?
Don't forget to breathe.
Okay. Good.
Consciously. Don't forget to breathe.
Very good advice. Yes. So if listeners wanted to connect with you or your foundation or, find out more about your speaking, what is the best way to do that?
Yes, the foundation has a presence on social media. I don't, but they do. You can find the Zaltho Foundation on Facebook and on Instagram. Also, there is the board of directors have come together and they've produced a really, really nice website. So you can find information about the foundation at www.zaltho.org. That's Zaltho, Zaltho.
Okay. And if you forget that, you can go to the radio website, which is soulfireradio.com, click on guests, and scroll down to Claude AnShin Thomas, his name, and then under that, the foundation is listed.
Ah, great. Thank you.
So thank you so much for being here today and talking about this. It's been a pleasure having you.
You're very welcome. I appreciate the opportunity to be on your show.
Yes, and we have a comment here. Okay, the Instagram page, someone asked, that is under Zaltho Foundation, and you can connect with it there.
Ah.
So
that's good.
So I have a quote for the listeners to carry with them through the week. And that quote is, "When war ends here within us, then war ends. If everyone ends the war within oneself, then there are no seeds any longer from which war can grow." And that is actually a quote from Claude AnShin Thomas from his first book, At Hell's Gate. So I think it's a very good and profound quote. So thank you.
Well, oh, you're welcome. As you were reading it, I was going,
Who said that?
Yeah, exactly. That was it. Yeah.
So, okay, well, as I said, thank you again for being here.
You're most welcome.
And I'd like to thank the listeners for listening today. And we have another great show planned for next week. Next week, my guest will be Lisa Barnett. And Lisa is an expert in the Akashic records. And so we're going to find out more about what those are and, you know, what she knows about it. So be sure to tune in next Tuesday. That's the 21st at 3 p.m. And so thank you again. And I'm just going to say bye for now.
Yes. Thanks a lot, Kate. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to Soul Fire Wisdom with Kate Olson. We hope you enjoyed the show. If we made you laugh, brightened your day, or sparked a new thought, we have succeeded in our mission. Join us next time when we'll share more secrets and truths and all the magic of transformation that is the journey to Soul Fire Wisdom. Always remember, be fierce in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire.
Yeah.